And I'm live. Hello. Hello, One Great Earth. Currently have what is known as the Sudd. It's locally called, named for the swamp. In South Sudan, the largest wetland, marshlands, still around. Currently has fire all around it. Now it's kind of like a fork, kind of more like a Y shape. The Sudd have here as you can see here, the Sudd is a miter line down from Bantui and Malakal. It's on the White Nile, being fed from the Blue Nile, from Lake Albert to Victoria Nile. It's South Sudan is pretty big, and this wetland was probably their greatest natural reserve, because they do have two other national forests that I know of, one in Boma and the other one on the western side. This is far greater than a national forest. We are losing wetlands. But this area here, if a wetland is destroyed, the climate catastrophe that hits that region will be very detrimental to at least human life, or anything that requires to live on land, because you have these regions that are able to take in this amount of precipitation, let's say 6 months of rain, in a few short hours. This unending permanent fixture of your countryside does its work. But if it's taken away and poisoned, because nothing thrives under smoke, and smoke will just consume every inch of this area. Smoke makes water sick, and let me turn this off here. There. I can see here plenty of plumes of white smoke. Let me remove this here. There's a lot of plumes of white smoke. Those are not clouds. These aren't clouds that you're seeing here. We know that because we can go into false color, and all of these areas that are blackened are recent burns. If it's more of a brownish hue, it's in burn that just probably ended. But you're seeing a lot of transitional burns, because this area will burn, transition to another area, and they'll burn out up into is bumping up to the previous burn. They're complex based on its topography and richness in fuel that is able to be burned. Now, you go to false color to get a better sense of this. So you can see here, very, very, very swampy, very marshy. Probably, I don't know, one of the very last remaining. We know that we can come here to cifor.org and we can look at global wetlands, and I already have South Sudan here pulled up. You can see these wetlands extend far beyond where I said, in Malakal, and don't remember the name of the other city, village, settlement. Anyway, it's a third of their country is wetland, and I'll just zoom out now. You tell me where else. India's been burning. They've lost so much of their wild over the last year or two, and same as South America, or Latin America. From here all the way down to more Paraguay, where there's been some wildfires spotted. I mean wildfires like spotted, like I've done a video regarding Paraguay to Bolivia. I've done wildfire videos from Senegal to Ethiopia, but the fires around in South Sudan weren't nearly as alarming as they are now. Like, normally I would get on a stream without much of a focus yet and try to work into something, but this is immediately concerning, internationally concerning. We're not going to see the effects of such a thriving marsh into extinction. There's not going to be that much left. As we can see here, last 1 meter, 1 kilometer. This is just one flank of one fire that's currently burning on the southwestern side of, it's all the way October, I don't need that. You can see this is December, relatively fire free. Beautiful landscape. Then see here, some fire is introduced into the area for many reasons why. On the southeast and the southwest sides of this area, you see a lot of cloud coverage, followed by massive amounts of streaks of fire that are just look completely wind driven. You have these fan outs where they all the way down the lanes. You see them here on both sides, and those, the winds are too strong for the fire to continue its width increase, so it just does this, and it keeps going until it hits a streak of land where it's going to be beneficial to the fire, because the fire is always going to go path of least resistance. So fire getting blown at a hillside is going to cause it to shrink into a focal point, increasing its heat, allowing for the fire to burn more further out than where it currently is. Like right here might not be as hot as all of this. A firestorm, the internal of a firestorm can be 700 degrees Fahrenheit. It isn't out of the question, but it's not just the flame, the fire, that does everything. And I am back. Apologize. Now, again, we're just looking at a portion of the exterior of the wild, not in the wetland itself just yet, but it's not far from where we're looking at right now. It's an ungodly amount of fire. You come up, and let's see if we can find some fire that's not just in the wetland so far, because there are these giant streaks of fire that run down the lanes. You can see all that we were just looking at, that's all from fire damage recently within the last 30 days. This is some of the last remaining wetlands on the planet. Regardless of we know between the Sudanese military, South Sudanese military, and the Rapid Support Forces, and as we know from Russian playbooks, they're not against complete ecocide, eco-terrorism, and complete acts of harm to all forms of life. You poison an entire water supply, or you destroy an entire dam that leads to catastrophic conditions of everyone living within the region, including in occupied territories. I didn't really care. We can see here, ecocide and eco-terrorism, we can't rule out. These fires are too great, and our first responders, especially military first responders that would be handling the aircraft that would be dumping water on these flames. It's really unfortunate to even think that this could be an act of sabotage, because nobody benefits from this, and nothing thrives under fire, and only certain seeds, I guess, and then everything chokes under smoke. So the only reason to do this is to drive away people that you might want to get rid of with smoke and fire, because it's not the wetlands you want to be attacking directly, so you want indirect attack on people that just happen to be in the area. I don't get that train of thought. It's alarming to think that how many countries, I think it's up to 7 in Africa, that are suspended from the African Union, which is an altogether body that forms itself in the European Union. Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Sudan, Gabon. And there's 5 right there. I might be forgetting a couple, but that's right there. Should we be worried about all the natural reserves and parks and forests of these countries that are experiencing either a coup, civil uprising? Normally doesn't result in the burning of natural resources, so why is it whenever there's war introduced, it suffers the most? We don't get this back. It's burning right now. It's not like we're saying, hey, we should save the forest now. No, it's fucking burning now. We're letting this climate get a little too out of hand, because where is this precipitation going to go? And it's not going to be able to drown a wetland permanently. Look at that fire. It is fast moving. Millions of birds, especially ones that are only indicative in the area. A lot can suffer besides just people. This is out of control. So you can see, let me turn on the border so I don't get too far away from South Sudan. As you can see, this is the Sudd, shaped like a Y. And as you can see here, this is just northeast of the Sudd, and every single streak you see here is a fire. Every single streak you see here is a piece of land, vegetation, brush, bush that is currently burning. We would usually call fires that are low height either a bush or a brush, depending, just on a meter or so, if I remember correctly. But this is burning and they don't have the slides up there just yet, but they were. And these fires are streaking throughout the entire countryside. They are also, unfortunately, near forests. You have a limited amount of time and resources. Do you tend water to forest or the wetlands? Which one is more realistic in saving? What's the least amount of damage that you can do with the pink stuff to drop somewhere? I know in South Africa they do that, but I don't know if Eastern Africa or Central Africa or even Western Africa, if they drop the pink stuff. I don't think it'd do much good dropping it in a wetland in the first place. That would just defeat the purpose of trying to save it. But this is massive amounts of fire, and it's burning all along the river system. As you can see, the wind is always going. Say there's a river here. Fire gets here. There's a lot of vegetation here. Let's say there's a lot of vegetation here because it's a wetland. The wind is pushing down this fire to the slope of the land, this natural taper, up until this riverbank or channel or ditch, whatever. And there is going to be another, wind stream that's going to be acting as a vortex that's inside on the surface of this water, where the wind can just turn easier, allowing for a lot of different effects. You see, like on the water, the curve of the wind, but that also will help use the momentum so these fires continue up. So you get a lot of these slashes that are just pretty wicked when it comes to a fire saving itself and propping itself back up over and over again. Usually it's due to, as you can see here, the wildfire conditions are just out of control. It's all along the countryside. Let me see if I make sure. I don't want to go too far south. I don't want to go outside of the border of South Sudan. If I go outside the border, I think I'd rather keep that into a separate video, because we have a lot to discuss, we have a lot to go over. And this is all just within the last day. This is not, what we're looking at right here is today, the last day, the last 24 hours of scans. Whenever I use time lapse, that's the last month. But you can see a lot of these fires, they only started just in the last 2 days. But this massive amounts of starts. And I don't see any stops. But here, we can see this fire that's literally burning right alongside on the swampy side. You can go to true color, we can see the swampiness. You can see the swampiness here, and you can see the smoke hovering over the swampiness, and you can see the moisture index. You want that swampiness to still be here. It's burning too close, and there could be already a fire like this right here. Fire in the wetland. It's too late. It's up to them as custodians of the land to take care of this. They failed, humanity has failed. It goes much deeper than just this country couldn't manage a wetland or an Everglade, whatever you would want to refer to it as. But this is fire in a wetland. This is a wetland on fire. What we were just looking at before was the exterior just before you get into the wetland, but doesn't mean the wetland's not burning. As we can see here, without any special technique or image script, anything like that, that would be able to show us this isn't, I mean, this is smoke, plenty of smoke, burning near a body of water in a swampy area of South Sudan known as the Sudd, or swamp. It is the largest wetland on the planet, and it is currently on fire. I have never seen this on fire before. Not in such a ridiculously overkill. I mean, if you want to destroy a wetland, this is how you do it. You start fires on every single side of the wetland that burn out of control south, north, east, and west. So what do? Is anybody fighting these fires? Are they able to fight these fires? Is it one of the other military bodies that are trying to smoke out the other, and one of these fires just happened to get away from them, you would only want to commit arson to hurt people. But what if it's the people that you hurt are in the hundreds of millions? This would affect Nigeria, a country of over 230 million people. You think they want to experience having 3 months of rain every month in a day? You're talking about precipitation that's supposed to be going into a permanent swamp. It's not going to want to move. These systems line up. But you destroy all the vegetation, the brush, the trees that are inside the wetland. You get away with the ability for the excess amount of water to be able to be balanced. You're going to start seeing a lot of flooding, especially a lot of flooding because of the amount of burn scars we're seeing. These burn scars will act as slides that water can't penetrate, and it just rolls right over. It's a lot of horror, that we're making the ground all surrounding a wetland impenetrable by water. So what happens when the water comes out of the wetland? It just sloshes around. Like, I'm not kidding. If you haven't seen this before, the water doesn't react the same over freshly burned land. It literally will just skid right over it like it was hydrophobic. But it's just either the ground's too saturated and the water can't penetrate any further, or the ground is burned to the point that it just slides across. It is a really unbelievable phenomenon, and I don't recommend trying it at home. But there's probably plenty of YouTube videos that that would be like ABC7 that would be covering stuff like that. Like real journalists. How do you put a wire in a fit? So I lost connection. Covering stuff like that. Each one of these plume after plume after plume, these fires are catastrophic. It looks like they're burning the only roads to the area. They, I mean the fires, not they representing people at all. This is an international tragedy. Not going to see it just yet, but look at that. Look at that fire. Look at that smoke burning. People like the Everglades can burn. Wetlands catch on fire. It's unnatural to see, but there's no argument here with what we are seeing occur. We're seeing dozens of fires starts that are happening within the last 2 days, last day, all along what would be wetland meeting, marshy kind of wetland meeting normal ground, like a coastline. Can't think of the word, but the exterior parts of the wetland before it gets into the normal lush forest that surrounds it is going to be the first line of defense. Except that we can see here that fire's already made its way into into the wetland itself. You can see here as well these burn scars and a couple other starts inside that. The world's largest wetland is on fire, and it is surrounded by fire, and it looks like a lot of the South Sudan is just on fire. Like, let's make a whole overview of the wetland itself here. Fire is encroaching from many kilometers away, but they are all going into the same direction of this wetland. You have all this burning to the south now. Another way we can look at this is using the moisture index, because fire and heat drives away moisture and water. Is moisture that begins to dip around 28th as these flames begin to encroach closer into the wetland itself. But as you can see right here, fire is already in the wetland in certain areas. We know they're fire because we can see the smoke, we can see the fire, and we turn on thermal imaging, we can see the heat. I don't know what these... No, they're all fire, it's all fire. Every single one of these markings here that is darker than green is a fire within the last day. We know that because just a month ago you can only see a little bit of fire, and that fire raged and raged and raged for weeks until now. Push play again. That's just right into really, I see four areas that are burning within here. The very south flank. See up here, central east. And northern east, northern central actually. And far northern is all burning in a line together. You see all this darkened, flashed area. There's been fires before, but these fires, their active perimeter is all along the perimeter of the wetland. Whatever would be the equivalent word for coastal. We're seeing a wetland burning right before our eyes. And I don't know if somebody's actually been able to do anything about it due to the ongoing conflict within South Sudan between the Rapid Support Forces, Sudanese military. All I know is that I can only see fire I only see fire all along the wetland. Now, the wetland can become wildfire, and it can become the largest torch on the planet. This is burning all along the countryside. Every single mark here. This isn't a field. This is a burn. You're seeing all along the river system. It adds pollutants to the local river system. It adds carcinogens. It harms fish supply. It harms natural resources. Because nothing thrives under fire. It's only the dust the animals want, usually after the fire is done. They roll around in it. These are significant fires for an area that's supposed to be very protected. See here, in South Sudan, it can spread. But also, this can be a very large wildfire that could happen inside a wetland. It's too fragile. And the fire is too fierce and numerous, and you're gonna call a ceasefire based on environmental concerns. Can't even have a ceasefire based on humanitarian concerns. We can cry as much as we want, but these are more reflections now of what we're losing before we're given a chance for it to be human understanding all across the board. Everybody understands the purpose of a wetland. But they're extinct. Possibly extinct. If this goes, I mean, this is so many times larger than the other Everglades. It's extremely harmful for the cycle of water and life throughout Africa. You can think about it as Africa's heart. Pumps the blood. Permanently flooded. Very complicated. Very swampy. Very ripe with life. Life that doesn't go outside of the swamp. Because it's evolved to live in a swamp, to thrive in water, thrive in murkiness. So most of these animals that sense danger, that live in, they'll probably hide in the water, dive in the water, and hopefully the fires miss them, but it's the ash, the smoke, the loss of hiding places, the loss of mobility aids. You think about how animals move, they don't just waddle along, they're going to use every inch to scrape on by if they're running away from danger. So you have these collective animals that just all dive in the water, go in the water because of danger. It's like why crocodiles have been so successful, because they can stay underwater for as long as possible with just their snoot just hanging out. Just their snoot out of the water. Well, if the crocodile wants to go under the water because of fire, because of a tree's burning, the smoke inhalation is going to rip that beast apart. Say 25-footer. It's under the water, the fire's coming, it's relatively safe from the fire, but due to the thickness of the fuel, that richness, you can get a lot of dead animals very quickly, because they have these elaborate rituals and reasons to deal with danger, and most of them that live in a wetland would be response to hide in the water, hide in the bush, hide in the brush, and everywhere they want to go, even if it is up a tree, is still, if it gets smoked out. This is harmful to all life on the planet. We need wetlands. We needed wetlands, and I'm afraid by the time this makes more news, it's going to be over. We'll be able to look back and see where the pools used to be, how the vegetation used to completely cover what is a lake, pretty much. Like it's just massive, massive wetland. Like 230 kilometers as the bird flies. But I don't know if this is something I've seen before, with so much fire encroaching all along a wetland. Now, Malakal has been burning as well. This whole area has been burning. The fires are just continuing south, southwest, right into but I don't see people fighting. I don't see any fire being fought back. It looks to just be going on its own pace wherever it wants. I was expecting to talk about more things today, but this really is taking precedence just because the alarming amount of fire that's surrounding a very large, the largest wetland on the planet. There's no other way to really put it. It's not, I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's very serious internationally. I think the world would condemn a lot of different reasons suspected for arson, but to allow these fires to burn so long into the month of December, now they're too numerous, they're too large, too great, completely surrounding a wetland. Let's go 2023 December 31st. Try to get one more scan out of it. There we go. What the hell is this? Why is there so much fire? You know why, but why is there so much fire? Are they trying to find people that are evacuating, that are hiding in the bush? This is insane. This is plant extinction. Some massive fires here just being fed all over the place, and they just keep rolling around. This is the northeast region of the Sudd. You see fire just erupting all along in a path of probably wind driven. They look like blasted. And even up here on the far northern side of the Sudd is there's more fire. So all along the perimeter of this wetland is surrounded by fire that's currently burning right now. No radio broadcast for me to tune into or fire department. It doesn't look like anybody is fighting this, and I don't think anything could fight this. This is too great. Are you gonna start taking water out of the swamp and dumping it onto the fires? That might not be very good source of water to be able to pick up in a helicopter. Really sediment heavy, swampy water. This is a lot. You see South Sudan all the way south. All fire. This is all along the exterior of what I would refer to as the coastline of the swamp meets natural livable terrain. This is unspeakably evil if this is man-created fires here, but this also should be as unequally unspeakable if these fires have been going and ignored. I understand there's a civil war going on between the two military branches, Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese military. But whose responsibility, and is it too dangerous to try for brigades to be able to tackle some of these fires on their own? Would they be even able to get permission? If they use military equipment to be able to help put these fires out, would they be at risk as targets? These... Look at that. Look at that burn. This is inside the wetland, the northern section of it. So fire has already been introduced to the wetland, inside the wetland, and is currently burning. Now the next step is going to see just how big these fires get and how fast they spread in a wetland, because a wetland has its entire aquatic biosphere covered with vegetation. So just because it's on top of the water doesn't mean it's not going to burn. You can pour oil all across the Gulf of Mexico and set it on fire and it'll still burn. It's not going into the water, it's not dunking into the water, it's still going to stay lit due to the density of it. And then you're going to get a lot of sick water. You get a lot of this duckweed and everything else that's on top of the water that burns at a lot of tiny lives rely on so much of this. As you can see, the fire is just tearing it out. You can see here in the month of December just raged. It's gonna burn these areas bald. You see here more fire. There's a lot of fire that's inside the wetland right now. Again, for reference, this is the area that we're talking about here. There's gonna be fire here, fire here, here. These fires are extreme, and there isn't a massive wall built up of flame just on the outside of the Sudd. These fires don't take themselves out. They're not going to extinguish themselves just because they're entering into a marsh. There's plenty of vegetation inside of marsh to be able to transit all across the place. It's going to burn all these amazing, lush, old ancient woods, marshlands, poison it. Just hundreds of fires in the last 2 days. This is ghastly. We're looking at, if these fires were coming over, no, I don't want to speculate. These fires are just too huge. These massive, coming from different directions. You know, it's like there's no firefighting, there's no wildland firefighting during civil unrest. I see that. These people that live in these areas here, not in the main cities of Sudan where the fighting is, what do? You just watch the countryside burn and there's nobody that can do anything about it. This fire is already in the wetland. Late. Terrible smoke and horrible fires. Okay. On that note, I will call this stream here. I thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Encourage me to make more videos throughout the day. Try to make a separate video for each, not just incident, I mean for each country. Try to get a better organization. Whenever I look back at my week or two of this casting, I want to be able to see different countries and different areas for different reasons, instead of just saying all of West Africa in one stream, because it's getting to be too much. It's a lot to cover in just under an hour sometimes, because the amount of fires that are burning just like this, just burning all along the countryside, all along South Sudan as a whole, right up to the borders. But this is a border that should be the most important, is the world's largest wetland, Sudd, South Sudan. All right. Please be safe. Have a good night.